Welcome everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the CASA project, Stand Up for a Child, written by Sandy Actor, directed by Lydia Brubaker, produced by Creative Works of Lancaster. I am neither one of those people. My name is Melissa Liebig and I'm from CASA of Lancaster. I help out with the community outreach, and on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for choosing to support CASA today. Now, you'll soon find out what CASA is and who the volunteers are. They actually are the true heroes of the story, and I know that we have a couple of volunteers here today, so if you are CASA, at this point I would like you to stand, please. Look at that. And if you could stay standing for one more minute, if you have any questions about volunteering or the organization, our CASAs, hopefully some of you will hang back after the show today, as well as myself will be up here with Creative Works if you'd like to learn more about producing or acting or getting involved with CASA. And again, the show is going to tell you all about us, but one thing the show will not tell you is that we run on the goodwill of the Lancaster County community. We do not receive any direct federal or state funding, but operate on your donations. So thank you so much for all the donations that you've given thus far, and if you hadn't had a chance to do so, there will be an opportunity at the end of the show. So without further ado, let the show begin.
Ring around a rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, all fall down. She's just a little girl, frozen in time, walking down the dark, dirt road, letting the rain wash the blood from her body. Someone whispers her name. She runs as fast as her little legs can go. Her heart beats faster and faster. The rain has begun to fall harder. The blood continues to flow. Again, she hears the voice. She stops in her tracks and looks up at the sky. God? This was my first interview for the CASA project.
To say the least, I was a little nervous.
Court-appointed special advocates? Before this assignment, I never even heard of them.
The interview was for 8 a.m.
Not an easy time for a college student to get up.
She gave me directions.
I had no idea if I'd be able to find it.
I didn't know what to expect.
Was I in the right place?
I was worried.
About working the recorder right.
About sticking to my notes too much.
About making a fool of myself.
I was running late.
My car broke down.
I forgot my questions and had to wing it.
This was my first interview for the CASA project.
I wanted to stay in my room.
And, revert to the fetal position.
Throw a blanket over my body.
Pretend to be back in the womb.
To say the least, I was a little nervous.
I followed a series of twisting hallways until I found the Lancaster County Children and Youth Agency. A worried couple spoke in hushed tones just inside the door.
I had pictured the county juvenile office completely differently. I had no idea that the kids would be in the waiting rooms. Kids with house arrest ankles, arrest bands around their ankles, and kids that looked pretty tough. There were little kids, too, who looked sweet and innocent.
It took weeks for the child's attorney to answer my calls. When I got to his office, the walls were covered with CASA paraphernalia.
The agency worker was young, probably 25 or 26. She had a nice smile. She propped her feet up on a box of toys. I placed a recorder on the floor between us.
A couple minutes later, a young woman came and got me. Not what I pictured a juvenile officer would look like at all.
You could tell he was a lawyer and had been interviewed before. He was careful in what he said since the tape was rolling.
So, where do these children come from? How do they get into the system?
Usually, it begins with a call to the hotline.
This isn't easy for me, but I have to tell someone.
No one will know, will they?
Sometimes we get people who come here in person.
Will they know I'm the one who told you?
No one will know.
Mandated reporters, teachers, school bus drivers, psychologists, doctors. They'll call us too. And then sometimes there's been an incident with the police, and they'll take custody and call us.
Someone goes out and evaluates the situation. And if it turns out the child is in danger, the juvenile officer can take custody.
A lot of times, the police will have taken protective custody in the middle of the night, in a domestic disturbance, say, or if it was a meth lab that got busted.
No!
You can't come in here!
What do you think you're doing?
Stop!
Abused or neglected is not a state-of-the-art term. It may be sexual misconduct.
Or failure to provide food, clothing, or shelter.
Or having a disgusting roach-infested house.
You have no right to take her!
That's my baby!
Let go of her!
Let go!
Let her go!
It can be physical abuse by spanking.
I didn't abuse her.
I didn't!
That's not battering!
Cigarette burns between the fingers, between the toes.
Alcohol.
We've had kids as young as 2 and 3 be given alcohol. Kids as young as 4 being given drugs of every variety.
One of the most common things we see now is kids in a house where meth is produced.
It can also be hospital removals, moms on drugs, babies testing positive for cocaine or crack or meth.
We also have what we call failure to thrive babies who just haven't been nurtured. They may have been given food, but they haven't been picked up, held, given any kind of love.
That's so hard to imagine.
Kids having kids 15, 16, younger even, they just don't know what to do with the baby.
A couple of years ago, this one mom was just limited mentally, emotionally. She had an eating disorder herself, and she forgot to feed her baby.
So we don't have clear definitions.
Just this morning, one of my clients said,
I didn't abuse her.
I didn't!
I spanked her.
That's not battering!
My dad did a lot worse to me.
Nobody called that battering.
She bruises easily. Come on, she always has.
It's not our fault.
It's not our fault.
We have a meeting, the child, the parents, law enforcement, whoever's involved in the allegation, and we investigate the situation together. We make a determination at that point. I am taking custody of your child. She's going into the legal and physical custody of children and youth.
Then they transfer custody to us, and we place the child in foster care.
She's mine.
the child's attorney represents the interests of the child to the court. I gather information from the various sources and use that information to help me make recommendations.
What sort of recommendations?
Should the child be receiving visits?
Supervised or unsupervised?
Can another relative visit?
Are the parents following the plan we've set out for them?
Detox?
Parenting skills class?
Decent shelter?
A job?
Should the child stay in foster care?
Or be put up for adoption?
Or go home?
What do I need to do to get her back?
Tell me what I need to do. Please tell me, what do I need to do?
You need to work with family services.
You need to complete your treatment plan.
Reuniting a family is the ideal situation.
But in some cases, the abuse and neglect will be so severe that we have to recommend termination of parental rights.
When we've done everything we can do and it's no use.
We've had parents who just walk away.
They don't even try.
We got this little baby in the hospital.
Mom tested positive for drugs when he was born.
We tried to meet with her about it.
We probably wouldn't have taken physical custody at that point.
We probably would have just taken legal custody and provided services and asked her to go into rehab, and she could have kept her kid.
She walked away.
She just
Walked away.
In a lot of cases of sexual abuse, the mothers will choose the perpetrator over their own child.
Obviously, we are not going to return that child.
It's hard to understand how people can treat their own children that way.
You have to keep in mind, you don't know what they've been through themselves.
My dad did a lot worse to me.
Nobody called that abuse.
Maybe you can help turn it around.
Most of the children will tell you.
I want to be with my mom and dad. I wanted to be with my mom and dad.
You know, you beat a dog, but he still comes back to you.
It's kind of the same way with these kids.
It was the only life I knew.
To them, it was normal.
They love their parents.
Why can't I live with them? It was the only life I knew.
We see children in horrendous circumstances. And once you get over that shock, then it's the numbers that shock you.
How many cases do you have at one time?
About 150.
Yourself?
Yes.
I've got an outrageous number of cases. 50 to 60 is the average. But we're in crisis right now. I have 85, I think. I've lost count.
We changed caseworkers 3 times last month.
Then how often do you see the children you're working with?
I wish I got to visit with them more than I do. I meet every 30 days with all of the people involved in each case.
Foster parents.
Biological parents.
I sit down at the beginning of the month and schedule all these people I need to see. On top of that, I've got parent-child visits. Then if I have to take the kid to counseling, we're a taxi service, really. We are. It's crazy. So, if it comes in front of my face, I do it. If the phone rings, I answer it.
The phone rings.
The phone rings.
The phone rings.
I'm supposed to write down everything that happens, but it's almost impossible to find the time.
Time.
Typically, I see children once a year. I've got a law practice in addition to this. And sometimes I feel like as one more person asking questions, I'm more of a problem than I am a solution. These kids see counselors.
Therapists, social workers, police officers.
They get real tired of telling that story over and over.
Eventually they quit talking.
So how do you determine what's in the child's best interest?
Reports from the agency, investigative reports, therapist reports. I routinely talk to the therapists about the kids and how they're doing.
What role does the CASA volunteer play?
The idea behind court-appointed special advocates is it's one volunteer, and they're going to see that child from now until the end of the case. I find out a lot of information from the CASA workers that I don't know otherwise. They're there in the foster home twice a month.
They relate information to the attorney, to the agency, to me at the juvenile office.
They tell us what's going on with the kid, the foster family, the biological family.
School, therapy, everything.
So we can react faster, make decisions faster.
Oh, let me give you one example. I had a little boy, a beautiful little boy, 12 years old. His parents dumped him at the juvenile office.
They were from out of town.
Look, we've got some problems in our life right now.
They just walked in and said,
We can't take care of this kid.
We just can't. That's all there is to it.
So, here, you take him.
Take him?
You take him.
That's all there is to it. It's incredible that people could abandon a kid like that.
I was appointed child's attorney on that case.
a lot of these children in foster care are placed out of county.
There are not enough foster homes in the county to take them.
This particular young man was placed quite a few miles from here. A CASA would go visit him twice a month and bring back information about him. And really, she was the only constant thing in that kid's life. If he'd get in trouble in school, she'll find out what was going on and help redirect the situation.
Without her going up there and bringing back information, nobody'd have any idea how the kid was doing.
Say a kid gets kicked out of school. If you know about it a week after, you can take some action. If you know about it 2 months later, you can't.
This kid's done really well.
The CASA volunteer, she'd meet with the principal. She'd meet with the teachers.
She really encouraged him.
And he's bright. He really soared in school. I attribute a fair amount of that to her.
Does that kind of fill you in on the background?
Oh, very well. I am twice as educated as when I came in. Is there anything you'd like to add that I haven't asked?
Abuse and neglect are confidential situations, so they're hardly ever in the newspaper.
You'll hear about it now and then. A leak will get out.
But kids are abused all the time.
Babies test positive for drugs all the time.
Children die all the time.
The hotline is anonymous. Make the call.
Don't just sit around and complain about it.
Don't just shove it behind the door because you don't want to deal with it.
Do something.
Make the call.
Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come baby, cradle and all. I saw you in my dreams that night. You came up to me, so gentle and loving. As you held me in your arms, you said I could trust you with my life. You bought me things and treated me like I was your special little boy. You came to my room that night. You slid your hands around my small, fragile body. You whispered softly in my ear, "I love you." As you caressed my body, my mind started wandering, or maybe I just started dreaming. The last thing I remember is a deep, sharp pain and a gush of warmth. My mind hasn't been quite right since that night you showed me how much you loved me.
I was amazed by the foster parents.
I never imagined people my grandparents' age would be so willing to take in so many children with so many problems.
These people are a gift from God.
This couple has had 150 foster children over 32 years.
Seeing what they do day in and day out can really make you stop and think how lucky you really are.
These children keep me young, she said. They're my health tonic.
He must have had one of the healthiest hearts on earth.
I just wanted to hug them both and let them know how wonderful they are.
This house is a home. I knew it the instant I pulled into the driveway and saw the toys on the porch, the dogs at my tire.
A 9-year-old boy answered the door. When I asked if his mom was there, he ran into the house and screamed for her. Two little girls grabbed my hands and led me inside.
The kids were on the other side of the room and kept coming over to ask their foster mom some questions. It was really neat seeing that these kids who used to be in rough situations were acting like normal children.
Pictures of children lined the walls.
The foster dad was sitting in a rocking chair with what appeared to be an infant, only a few days old. His wife was on the couch reading a book to a little boy. The boy and I made silly faces at each other during the interview. He sang Jingle Bells and Old MacDonald for me. When it was time to go, he marched over and gave me a hug. He threw his arms around my neck and then ran away really fast.
So, how did you get into foster parenting?
Well, when we got into it, it was simply to help out our church. Our first little boy was an abandoned child. We fell in love with foster care, and we've been doing it ever since.
A friend's wife died. He had 5 boys and he needed help. So we fostered those 5 and then just kept going.
I'm a registered nurse. I had my own children and didn't have a babysitter because I didn't want to leave my children with just anybody. So this is something I could do to fill a need in me and do a service also. That's how we got started.
We kept our first one 7 years, and then a young couple fell in love with him, and he fell in love with them, and now we've become grandma and grandpa.
That's most of the children we foster. We become grandma and grandpa after they leave our home.
Do you find it hard to give them up when they're adopted?
Extremely hard.
They become part of you.
You invest your life with them for the short time they're with you.
When you lose them, it's part of you going out the door.
With some of them. Some of them, it's a blessing.
Yeah, some of them you carried them to the car and put them in so they can drive away quickly.
Your family functions a lot easier when they've gone.
Yeah, there's some you say, oh, why did I take this child?
This child.
This child.
This child.
But you keep plugging at it and eventually you win.
It's hard to give them up because you do love them.
We've adopted 4 of them.
There's a lot of heartstrings involved in foster care.
Men break down and cry just as much as women do when some of their kids leave.
My husband is a big teddy bear, and there's one child he can't really even discuss without going to pieces.
If you don't get attached, you shouldn't be in the business.
But if I see children going back to their parents or going on to good adoptive homes, and I've helped them in the meantime, that's my pay. Makes me feel real good.
That's the pay, all right.
The bank won't cash that check, though.
How do you think the system impacts the children?
It's terrible for the children, even with good foster homes.
Awfully tough on kids, moving them around.
No matter what the parents have done, they still miss them.
That's why we speak positive about the biological parents.
No matter how we feel.
Even though sometimes I'd like to pinch their heads off.
Yeah, but those people are also part of them.
I want to live with my mom and dad. My mom and dad.
My mom and
That's where they want to be.
You can't break the bond of a child.
Even if they got beaten every day, it's a routine.
And children need routine.
They're used to eating french fries and soda for dinner, and then you decide to have a salad and fruits and vegetables and meat. They're not used to it.
It's traumatic.
We take everything away from them.
We take their identity, their parents, their home, their neighborhood, their school, and then we try to give them a substitute.
One thing I see with foster care is that we put so many services in place for mom and dad to help them get back their kids, and we kind of ignore the kids and their needs. I have more than one time gone to the agency yelling and beating on the desk.
This kid is hurting!
This kid.
I need help.
But they always come through. We get the children what they need.
When the system works, it's a great thing.
And when it doesn't, we've got this kid crippled for life because a piece of him is missing.
So we speak positive.
But why did they take me away?
Well, your mommy and daddy, they've got some problems.
What problem? What kind of problem?
You're gonna live with us for a little while to get it worked out.
I do the mom things because your mom can't do them right now.
I'll take care of you.
I will keep you safe.
Now, sometimes I gotta tell you, there'll be those that quit honking. They revert back to soiling their pants and everything.
We have to start working all over again to bring them back out, to where they'll begin to think that they're worth something.
The foremost thing is to let the children know it wasn't their fault.
But if I hadn't come home late, Mom wouldn't have gotten mad.
If I hadn't done that.
If I hadn't done that.
Maybe they wouldn't have taken me away.
A lot of these kids think they're not good enough to make their parents love them.
Well, what do you do to help lift their self-esteem?
Try to give them a lot of positives.
Get them in sports.
In activities.
Lots of activities.
Stay in close contact with the school so you can help them there.
The foster home is a big part of making them feel they're worth something to somebody.
We had one little girl that had been in 22 foster homes.
I want a forever family.
Forever.
It was all I ever wanted.
Family.
I made a deal with her that if we didn't find her a perfect mommy and daddy, she could always come back to our house until we did. God smiled on that child and gave her a perfect mommy and daddy. This weekend, we go to her first communion. She's been adopted 4 years.
We see them start growing, becoming beautiful children.
They're not scared anymore.
They're not terrified of adults.
They become children again.
These children, they know things that no child ought to know.
They've seen it all.
They've done it.
Not just the teenagers, kids, 6, 7 years old.
And they are very wise in the system.
They can work a system like you wouldn't believe.
And they'll use it. They'll use every trick in the book on you.
But what it is they're protecting themselves.
By and large, the fathers aren't there, and the children have had problems with women. I have all kinds of advantages. They don't know what to do with me. I'm new and different. I tell them, there will be control in my house. You can control yourself or I'll do it for you, but there will be control in my house.
We don't spank.
That's not abuse.
My dad did a lot worse to me.
Yeah, nobody called that abuse.
No spanking, never.
We get violent children, and we've got to be firm enough to say, no, I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to beat you. But I might hold you until you can't wiggle very much.
We're taught that, how to restrain them so they don't hurt themselves or anybody else.
I had one, maybe 7 years old. He would get so violent. I'd wrap him up in a blanket and just hold him and tell him that I loved him.
Was he angry during all of this?
Oh, yes. And he was strong. He would get so angry, he would get violent. After a while, I'd sit him down and I'd unwrap him. If he reacted the wrong way, I'd wrap him back up again. And we did this for months. But now that child is a beautiful little individual, and he is being adopted by a beautiful family.
Well, there's one trick that I've learned. I've taught myself that my natural first answer to a question a kid asks, a request, is yes. Now, most parents, their first response tends to be no, but mine is yes. I mean, I don't mean it's yes to all questions, but unless I have a good reason to say no, I say yes. That's a good way to start with children.
Well, that's probably something they're not used to.
Right. I mean, you've been in a store where the mothers get a little harried and then the answer to any question is no.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's normal, but I'm able to take my 4 boys. I've been able to take 6 or 7 and get along with them. I have a rule that they can look at anything they want, but they may not touch, and they have to stay with me. So I'm welcome in any store, as far as I know.
When we get them, we begin to let them know they don't have to be afraid of us.
They're free to be a child.
Can I just stay here?
And they fall in love with that.
Can't you be my mom and dad?
Family. Forever.
It's all I ever wanted.
When you give love, you get love.
There's lots of good stories.
This one here, he's gonna be a big boy. And he can really throw you sometimes. He'll want to come crawl up in your lap, and I'll say, "Why would you want to come up here for?" And he'll say, "Because you love me."
I had a little blonde-headed little boy. I got him at 3 years old, and he was described as a drooling lump.
Really?
No capabilities, not supposed to be able to do anything. What happened was, for the first 2 years of his life, he couldn't hear. And they only fixed it just before I got him. He knew people were supposed to talk because he could see it. So he spoke his own language, he made noises, and we got the job of teaching him to talk. And the very first words he clearly spoke were, "Damn it!"
Oh my.
I had mashed my thumb and I said, "Damn it!
Damn it!
He spoke it perfectly. And he knew when to use it and how to use it. Those were his first words.
That's excellent. How old is he now?
He's 7, and he's adopted, and he's doing very well.
There's one little boy. When he came, he was picked up riding his tricycle down the middle of the street in a pair of diapers. Down the middle of the street.
And how old was he?
3 years old, almost 4. He wasn't potty trained, and he couldn't talk.
Wow.
I also had a little girl here at the same time. She was younger than he was, but she was not going to put up with that not being potty trained, not able to talk stuff. She remedied both of those things in very short order.
The little girl did?
Yep. She potty trained him in 3 days.
Wow.
And she was an excellent speech therapist for him. She wasn't going to put up with that business. He's gone to his grandparents now to be adopted, and he's doing really well.
And what about the little girl?
She's been back with her mother for over a year now. She and her sister. I still go to see them about every other weekend.
That's great.
Some families, they want the help and continued contact. If they'll work with me, I'll help them. Other families, they're afraid of the contact.
Natural parents or adoptive.
They don't realize that these kids have an attachment to foster parents, and sometimes they just cut you off completely. They want the child's life to start the day that they're adopted, and it doesn't do that. It starts the day they're born.
It's very hard on kids whipped around in the system like that. I've had some that couldn't ever learn to love. They just couldn't do it.
But when we're lucky, we get to be grandma and grandpa.
Do you think the CASA volunteers are helpful?
Oh, yes, I think they are.
I think they're super.
It shows the child that there's someone in their life, a grown-up, outside of the immediate family who will be your friend and ask nothing more and nothing less.
They'll be good to you, and they won't say or do anything that would hurt you.
CASAs are allowed to speak to the court, whereas foster parents were not.
Why is that?
Well, maybe with foster parents you could become attached, and so they're afraid, see that you want to keep the child, and so maybe your opinion wouldn't be exactly accurate.
These kids need all the input they can get and all the people who can build their esteem.
Foster parents need all the outside help they can get too. CASA is a real good source when you have a child with more needs than you have the time to give. They're one of the first places to go for help.
I wish we had more of them to spread around.
Well, thank you for answering my questions. Is there anything you'd like to say that I haven't asked?
I figured it out. What they pay and the hours we put in, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's 29 cents an hour that they're paying me to take care of these children.
That's without the food or clothes.
That's without anything.
People think we're in this for the money.
If we're in it to get rich and famous, we're in the wrong place.
We do it for the children.
We put in our time and effort for the love of the children.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
I found myself wandering the streets, too afraid to go home, knowing in the back of my mind something was going to happen. I found myself in the bathroom at school, a razor blade at my wrist, tears rolling down my cheek. I found myself looking at you. You were looking at me, lying there in the casket, this time with tears rolling down your cheek, asking me, why? I found myself saying to you,
You let him hurt me. You didn't protect me.
so I had to protect myself. I found myself asking God to forgive me for being dirty and naughty. God forgave me and said, "It was not your fault, my child. Your soul is pure and clean."
Today, I met with the CASA volunteer. She is the mother of 2 children who are out of the house.
I went to his office at 9 in the morning.
Her office was filled with books. There was stuff everywhere, on the floor, on her desk, and on shelves.
I could tell the tape recorder made him nervous.
When she talked about her cases, she had tears in her eyes.
The sparkle in his eyes told the whole story. Even though he had to drive 121 miles one way, he loved to visit his children.
She really believes in what she's doing.
He said he always wanted to do something to help children, and CASA was the open door he'd been looking for.
When I asked her how long her commitment was, she told me for life. Now, if that isn't dedication, I don't know what is. Okay, please explain how CASA came into being.
A judge in Seattle realized he needed more information about the kids he was seeing.
He was making decisions about where they would live.
But he didn't have all the facts.
What was really in the best interest of the child?
Attorneys, social workers, juvenile officers, they didn't have all the facts.
Everyone else's interests were represented to the court.
The parents, the institutions, the states.
But not the child.
In 1977, trained lay volunteers, court-appointed special advocates, stepped into King County Juvenile Courtroom for the first time.
To speak out on behalf of the children.
The judge's experiment was an enormous success.
And it spread all across the country.
I see. And what are your responsibilities?
When we're assigned a case, we read all the files within the first month.
From the Lancaster County Children and Youth Agency.
And the juvenile office.
You're allowed to do that?
We're required to do it.
Okay, so you read all those files and then...
And then we meet with the principals in the case.
The juvenile officer.
The caseworker at the agency.
The child's attorney.
The child.
Or children, if it's a family group.
The foster parents.
The biological parents.
Other family members, if we can.
And anyone else who might have useful information.
Teachers, doctors, therapists.
Then we visit our child at least twice a month. About an hour each time.
We monitor the progress of the case through the system.
Has the treatment plan been written and filed for court?
Are the biological parents following the plan?
Is everyone working to achieve permanence for the child?
Is the child being cared for properly?
Does he need special services?
Is she getting what she needs?
We provide monthly reports to everyone serving the case.
We attend the permanency planning review team meetings.
And the parent-child visits?
We prepare a complete report before the permanency hearing.
We are ready to testify in court if called upon.
And we keep all case information in strict confidence.
You do all that as a volunteer?
I consider volunteering to be one of the most important things I can give myself to.
I think it's important to the children to see that people really do genuinely care.
This person is not paid to come and see me talk to me.
This is a person who cares about me.
And sometimes people will talk to us, but not to anybody else, because we're not paid.
The biological parents, for instance.
You're not part of the system.
Exactly.
We didn't take their child away.
I think kids are such a gift, and I think it's so sad how some people don't get that. Just don't get it.
Being there for these kids, well, it's gotta be one of the greatest things I've ever done.
That's awesome.
It's our kids out there.
Our kids.
Our kids.
Our kids.
This is our community, and these are our kids.
And if they're falling between the cracks,
If they're hurt, if they're being neglected,
We all have to step in and help out.
They can't help themselves.
No, they can't. And as adults, we need to do it.
we need to do whatever we can.
How do you know what to do?
we've trained for it.
We're trained in what the law is,
What abuse is.
How to interview children.
how to document what we see and hear.
We are the eyes and the ears of the court.
And the voice of the child.
How are CASAs chosen?
We volunteer.
But there are background checks for criminal records.
And reference checks,
And interviews.
with a lot of very personal questions.
And values clarifications.
We have to be able to separate our own values from objective fact.
Some people believe that it takes 2 parents to raise a child, for instance, when in fact, a lot of single parents do a good job.
It's not always going to go the way we think it should.
And that's a fact we have to just deal with.
You have to get over the feeling that every child can have the same type of home you had.
Or your children had.
It's really tough to understand that what's best for this child can still be a long way from your ideal.
I have this one case. The parents were just too young. I mean, they're still too young. They've taken classes, they've gone to counseling, they're trying. And I understand that, but I still think you need to have a certain level of maturity, you know? So it can be frustrating.
There was one little boy. It was hard to see him go back with his mom and dad. They're living in an 18-wheeler. They don't have a home. They don't have a telephone. They travel from coast to coast. It's not what I'd like to see for him, but he has his own bed. Those trucks are like a mobile home, and he's with his mom and dad who love him.
The training sessions eliminate a few.
People realize, I'm too emotional. I can't deal with this.
I don't want to deal with this.
You see enough through training that it's really going to tug at your heartstrings.
But once you're working with the kids, it's just so much more rewarding than it is painful.
They're in a safe environment. It's not like you're seeing them in an abusive situation.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't sit and watch kids stay in an abusive situation.
But where they are now, they're safe and just need you to talk to them.
So what do you actually do when you're with them?
Well, the first thing I do when I go into the foster home is try to establish some kind of relationship with them.
The entire family?
The foster parents, other children in the home, and the child I'm working with, of course. So they'll know I'm going to be there twice a month as kind of a sort of special friend.
To say hi and how are things going?
I like to have some time with the whole family first, and then some private time with my child.
And some time with the foster parents at the end.
They need to know that we're not there to spy on them.
But they also need to know that we're not their CASA. We're the child's CASA.
We're there to help everyone do what's best for that child.
We get a lot more information if we have a good relationship with the family.
What kind of things do you do on your visits?
That depends on the children.
And whatever sparks the interest of that particular child.
Well, the smaller ones, you play games with them.
Crawl around on the floor with them, play chase.
You do that?
Oh yeah, get down on the floor, get all the stuff out, we play. Oh, we have a great time.
When it's warmer, we go outside.
We're not allowed to take the children anywhere in our cars, so we have to be in a place where you don't have to drive.
And we never visit them in a closed room.
Always where a foster parent can see us.
The whole family might come with us to the park.
Or a playground nearby.
But mostly just at the house.
In the summer, I will just sit on the porch.
I'm a great one for reading, so I'll read them a book.
I had one child who hated to read. So I just talked to her about different things, and I found out she was interested in Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie. So I talked to her about that and got her interested in reading through that. And she just couldn't get enough of it.
With babies, it's different. I hold them and I play with them.
Oh, trying to get them to do things that they should be doing on their age level.
We learn about that too. Child development, what to look for, signs of progress, and signs of abuse.
If they're getting enough love and attention, they'll usually do just fine.
So it's whatever the child needs.
It takes a while to win their confidence.
Who is this guy?
And there's so many people in their lives.
When CASA is added, It's just one more name that they have to contend with.
Why is he talking to me? I didn't want another stranger in my life.
Family.
Forever. Not another stranger.
But they come around.
In her mind, I'm just her good friend, which is what I want to be.
And while we're playing, we talk.
Is it sometimes difficult to answer the children's questions?
Oh, yes it is.
But why did they take me away? I wanted to be with my mom and dad.
A dysfunctional family, a filthy home.
But why?
They've never seen normal, so it's normal to them.
Forever. Family.
I want to go home.
When do we get to see her?
When?
When can she come home?
Forever.
When?
How much contact do you have with the biological parents?
Sometimes none at all.
Nobody knows where they are.
1 or 2 cases, I probably counseled the parents as much as the child, because it wasn't that bad of a case.
I had one parent, she didn't know how to cook.
I never learned.
I never knew.
No one ever bothered.
Nobody called that abuse.
It was out of the can and cold or whatever, so I taught her. And now, she's working as a cook.
And her children?
They're home, 2 boys. Let's see, they're going on 10 and 11 now. Nice kids.
Wow.
I miss my mom.
This wasn't our fault.
We're doing everything they told us to do.
I wanted to be with my mom and dad.
She's our child.
Forever.
She belongs with us.
Family.
Basically, the ones who fully understand why their child was taken, they're the same ones who want the child back.
The ones who will work towards it.
The others, the ones you don't ever meet,
they couldn't care less.
She said she was going to write to me. I never even got a birthday card.
It's very devastating to the child.
What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?
how do you make a kid feel wanted when her own parents don't want her?
At the parent-child visits, I watch what they say and how they act together.
We try to listen, try to glean. Are they doing what they're supposed to do?
They may be saying,
I want my children back.
I want my children.
But they're not going to parenting classes.
Or keeping their home in a way that shows they really want that child.
have they even found a place to live?
Or a job.
If we set up a meeting, do they show up?
I remember one mom. She never held her baby once. Never even picked him up.
There are a lot of programs set up to help that.
If they're willing.
It often seems to take 3 tries. They'll make an effort, they slip back. They try again, and they slip back. And then maybe they'll try again.
In this one case, I felt I could kind of mediate a little between the parents and the juvenile officer. He was convinced they'd never change, that they'd never come around. And I tried to diffuse it a little on both sides. I'd say, well, now I can see why you did what you did. This wasn't an abuse situation, it was more on the neglect side. And in that case, the family was able to turn it around.
So you really do play a role in helping the parents.
Our concern is the child.
Always the child.
The best interests of that child.
In another case, the abusive boyfriend was supposed to be out of the picture. Everything pointed to the child going home.
But the CASA kept seeing this pickup truck around the house.
So she reported it, and they traced the license plate number.
It was the boyfriend.
He and the mother were back together.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And that child could have gone back into the same abusive situation.
But she didn't.
Thanks to the CASA.
Or it can go the other way. In the reports we submit each month, we can say, in my opinion, this person has admitted what she did was wrong, and I really believe there's been a change.
So yes, we can make a difference.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think the general public looks at the system the way they should. Foster parents, for instance.
Those people do a tremendous service.
Children get put into their homes about the time everything has fallen apart, with no warning as to what the child's problems are.
They need a bed, say at 6 o'clock at night, because he's got to be moved out.
Take him.
Take him.
That's all there is to it.
And that's when they call. Can you take this child?
This child.
This child. This child.
Can you take another child?
They put up with more than you and I could ever imagine.
There's a lot of PR about foster homes, that they're doing it just to get money.
Believe me, they do much better robbing convenience stores.
Oh, it'd be easier.
And the social workers, too, and the juvenile officers.
They can't publicize their success stories because everything's confidential.
It's always in the news when they fail. They should have done this, and why didn't they do that?
But for every case where they fail, there are all these others where they did some good.
There's a bad egg here and there, sure. But there are a lot of good people who are interested in children, who really do care about children.
Children in terrible situations.
Everybody has things to confront in their own families. But I'd never been exposed to anything like this before. It's serious. It could really overwhelm me, but then I think, well, I know the worst there is. And these are people who need help.
There are innocent children in this situation.
So maybe that's where we can do some good.
It's amazing how many people are willing to do a lot of hard work for free.
Yes, there are. I just wish there were more of them.
The world is so full of a number of things. I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings. I feel you near me. I can see your bright smile and smell your sweet perfume. As you hold me tight in your arms, I feel your heart beating. You whisper, I love you. I look up at you and say the same. Although it's crisp and cold outside, my body and soul feel like the sun is shining down on me. I like feeling you near me, but it's only a dream.
As I sat and listened, I couldn't help but wonder.
Parent, child, how do these horrible cycles begin?
How many people turn their backs on these kids?
How did our society get to be this way?
I thought I had it rough because my parents got divorced when I was a kid. But it was nothing like this.
I thought of my mom reading Goodnight Moon and tucking me in every night.
The interviews were amazing.
He's obviously in love with what he does.
She made me want to sign up right then and there.
When you meet someone who really inspires you, you shouldn't let them disappear.
I could tell the judge loved children from the picture of her newborn grandson that she proudly displayed. She said there was a bill passed that requires photographs of each children in the system to be clipped to his or her file. That way, people will remember that they're dealing with a person, a child, not a number.
At times, I feel as if I'm watching a parade. Faces whirling by, a perpetual mound of paperwork toppling, pressing, building.
CASA, she said, is a lighthouse. A beacon in the overloaded system.
You know how a lighthouse works. They keep ships from running on the rocks in storms, and these children are in a real storm of their life. Sometimes I think that CASA volunteers may be the only light out there that keeps them guiding towards the shore instead of leaving them to crash on the rocks.
How much weight does a CASA report have to you?
I pay a lot of attention to it. It's very evident when you read a CASA report that they've talked to a lot of people. They look at the whole case and the files and the people, and they consider what they're saying. I give them a lot of weight.
Is it usual for a child to come here and testify?
Very unusual in juvenile court. In the times that it's happened, it's been older children, teenagers, but generally not. There's a certain amount of trauma attached to a child testifying. We try to avoid that.
When you make your decisions, do you consider the child's wishes?
I want to go back. I wanted to live with my mom and dad.
You can't take her.
She belongs to me.
Family. Forever.
I want to go home.
What do? Do you consider what the child wants?
Yes, but that's not necessarily what happens. When you and I were growing up, there were lots of things we wanted but we didn't get because we had a parent who said, that is not in your best interest. You don't understand that because you're 5 years old, but I understand that. We are concerned with their feelings, but someone has to make a decision.
So, how do you determine what's in the best for the child?
Well, it's easier for me to answer what is not in the child's best interests.
It's not in the best interests of children to stay in a household where they're physically or sexually abused.
Or where their parents are addicted and can't or won't take care of them.
It's not in the best interest of children to languish in foster care for years and years and never have any permanency.
The truth of it is, what's in the best interest of the child is not to be in the system at all. It's fine with me and preferable that a child go back home. But if parents won't do what they need to do, then that child deserves better, and I find a solution as soon as possible.
Are you sometimes overwhelmed with the number of cases?
There are a lot of cases, and every time you think you've seen the worst, something more terrible comes along. But you have to remember, these are children. They have faces and hopes and dreams and lives they want to live. You have to remember that.
What's the most rewarding thing about your job?
Knowing that you make a difference in the lives of children. Not in all cases, but some. Instead of getting overwhelmed with the numbers, you have to realize that you can make all the difference in this case, the one you're working with right now. And that's the way you do it.
One child at a time.
That's right. One child at a time.
Thank you.
It is my privilege and honor to preside today over the swearing in of this new group of CASA volunteers. Please rise. So often I'm asked, isn't it depressing to do the work that you do? Isn't it hard? But I know it would be much harder not to do anything. And one of the great joys of my job is that I meet true heroes, people who are willing to step into the lives of children to make a difference. Please raise your right hands. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and of this state, and that as a court-appointed special advocate, I will impartially and faithfully perform all duties incumbent upon me to the best of my skill and ability until released from said duty by the juvenile court. If so, say I do.
I do.
Ring around a rosy, a pocket full of posies.